One text split my evening in half. I'm shopping with Justine. Justine was in my living room helping me pick the ring I'd use to propose. In a second, romance turned into doubt, and doubt into a choice I didn't want to make. Do I protect the proposal or protect the truth? I thought that was the crisis, but what I learned next left me genuinely stunned. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what really happened. I thought I knew exactly how the next chapter of my life was going to begin, with a ring I couldn't stop staring at, a knee that might shake, and a yes that would change our names on the mailbox. I have rehearsed that scene so many times I could feel the velvet of an imaginary box in my palm. What I didn't rehearse was the text that split the evening in half. The moment when the story I was writing met a sentence I couldn't explain. One message, 8 words, and my steady heartbeat turned into a drum I couldn't quiet. By the time the front door opened, I wasn't sure if I was about to propose or press a fire alarm. I'm 28. She's 26. We've been together for 3 years. The kind of long enough that people stop asking if you're serious and start asking if you've thought about colors. I'm terrible with jewelry. To me, a heart shape is a heart, not a crime against design. So when it came time to find a ring, I did what I always do. I asked one of our friends who knows better. Her best friend called her Jay has taste, a spine made of honesty, and the exact kind of intel you need to choose something that won't live forever in a drawer. Jay came over while my girlfriend went to see her sister and new baby. We spread catalogs across the table like maps that might lead to a single bright stone. The catalogs were pretty and useless, all promise and no certainty. We agreed the answer lived under better lighting, in a case guarded by a person with a loupe and opinions. We just needed a window of time. That's where I got clever. I texted my girlfriend to ask when she'd be back. I said I was ordering takeout and needed to know when to tell them to get started so it would be hot. She replied that she'd be a few hours. Because this is the part that made the room tilt, she'd met up with Jay to go shopping. The phone glowed in my HANDJ sat across from me in my living room, holding a page of solitaires like a postcard from a place we hadn't visited yet. I turned the screen toward her. She blinked at her own name. It wasn't out of character for my girlfriend to make last-minute plans. Spontaneity is her second language. On any other day, I would have believed the text without a second thought. But Jay was there, and the message said she wasn't. The air felt different, like the temperature had changed without touching the thermostat. Stories like this keep you company. If you've ever watched a sentence change your whole evening, consider subscribing. I told the truth here, even when I wished the script was simpler. We stood in the kitchen for a while, not touching the catalogs, letting the quiet arrange itself around us. I wanted to check the timestamp, interrogate the dots on the message bubble like they might confess something. I wanted to call and say, "Where are you, really?" But there was no version of that question that didn't drag the ring into the light. I kept thinking about the ridiculousness of the situation. The only person who knew what I was doing was the same person my girlfriend claimed to be with. The lie, if it was a lie, had chosen the worst possible alibi. I wish I could tell you I confronted her immediately, that I chose clarity over choreography, but that would be a prettier version of me than the one that lives here. When she came home, she was sun-tired and soft, hair smelling like the outside. She kicked off her shoes and asked about dinner. I told her I'd already ordered. We ate from cartons, our knees touching under the coffee table. She tucked herself into my side on the couch, while a show we weren't watching flickered across the room. The house can go very quiet even when the TV is on. My mind kept returning to the text the way a tongue finds a broken tooth. She noticed, of course. You can't share a life with someone without learning the shape of their silence. She asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. She told me about a sale on something I don't remember, and some news story about her nephew's laugh, and I answered in the right places. but my yeses felt like pebbles skipping across water. When she went to brush her teeth, I stared at my phone again, as if timestamps could become alibis if you looked hard enough. The message didn't change. Jay was still on my couch in my memory, and somehow also out shopping in my girlfriend's text. That night, I slept like a person trying not to look at a door. The next morning, the question followed me from the mirror to the sink to the car. My brain started building bad scaffolding. Maybe Jay ran into her somewhere and they decided to browse. Maybe my girlfriend mixed up her texts. Maybe I was the one who didn't understand the obvious. But then the other scaffolding appeared, the one with sharper edges. Maybe this wasn't the first time a harmless detail bent itself into a story that kept me outside. You can call that paranoia. You can also call it being human. I did what people do when the ground shakes under their feet. I asked the internet how to stand. The answers were either torches or blankets. Half the voices said, "She's cheating, get out," like there was nothing between a question and a verdict. The other half said, "Don't even ask, walk away," as if silence were a cure and not just a symptom. A few people reminded me something important, but I kept losing under the noise. I was planning a proposal, not an interrogation. If I accused her without telling her why, I would have to invent a new lie to cover the truth I wanted to protect. If I told her why, I might ruin a moment I've been holding in my chest for months. I thought about rehearsed excuses. I thought about saying I ran into Jay at the store, about telling a story that could justify my suspicion without revealing its source. But none of those lines fit the day we'd actually had, and all of them felt like arsenic tucked into sugar. In the end, I chose honesty with a twist of caution. I would tell her what I was doing, because any marriage worth the ring should survive the truth. I would ask her where she really was when she said she was with Jay, and I would watch not just her answer, but the way it breathed. That evening, I set the table like a small ceremony. Not candles, we rarely do candles, but plates and actual napkins and the kind of fork you only reach for when you want a conversation to have a spine. She came in with the day still on her shoulders. We ate a little. I don't remember what. I remember deciding to step into the cold water all at once rather than inching toward it, because sometimes gradual hurts more. "I want to talk to you about yesterday," I said. "I think you know I've been thinking about proposing soon. I asked Jay to come over to help me look for a ring. She was here when you texted that you were with her. That didn't make sense to me. Can you tell me what was going on?" She blinked, and then her whole face changed. There's a smile people wear when you hand them a surprise they've wanted for years. This was almost that, pulled sideways by the weight of a secret. She asked me 3 questions in one breath. Was I serious? Was Jay serious? What kind of ring? Then she took a seam ripper to the conversation and opened it gently. She told me she lied. She did it quickly and without sugar, the way you admit you broke the good glass and there's no point pretending it slipped. She hadn't been with Jay. She also wasn't with someone I needed to be jealous of, or someone who was shopping for me. She was holding a promise I never expected. Some people are dog people, she said, and some are cat people. I have always been a snake person. I grew up around them, learning patience and stillness, and the way a slow blink can be its own kind of hello. When we moved in together, I didn't push for a snake because she was uneasy in that very specific way people can be about something they've never held. I respected it. I told myself adulthood was mostly compromise you could live with. She pulled up a photo on her phone and turned it toward me. There she was, my girlfriend, in a place full of glass cases and gentle light, holding a coil of sandy gold. A Kenyan sand boa. Small and absurdly beautiful, like a piece of sunrise fell asleep in her hands. She told me she'd been learning habitat, heating, feeding, all the details that live under the word care. She wanted to surprise me with the one animal I'd never stopped loving, because she'd decided it was time to learn the thing that scared her if it made me feel more at home. She lied about Jay because if she told me where she really was, I would have asked 100 questions and ruined the reveal. She chose the wrong cover because it felt like the safest thing she could say that would make me stop. Asking relief is a strange weather. It rained through me and left me both soaked and thirsty. My chest softened in that instant way it does when you realize a shadow was only the shape of a coat. I felt foolish and lucky and a little bruised by the road we took to get to this moment. I was also not done having feelings about the lie. Because yes, the surprise was kind. Yes, the intention was bright. And also, I had watched the house go quiet around one sentence I didn't understand. We talked for a long time, the kind of talk that reaches into the corners. I told her about the knot that formed when the text arrived, about the way an evening can tilt when the math doesn't add up. She told me about standing in the reptile shop, pretending she knew more than she did, wanting to bring me something I'd never thought I could ask for. We both used the words trust and future and please. We decided that surprises are wonderful, but alibis should be made of softer cloth. If you need to lie to protect a gift, maybe the gift needs a different wrapper. We put a date on the calendar to pick up the snake. We started a list on the fridge: enclosure size, substrate, hides, thermostat, a name we'd argue about in the best way. The pet store sent care sheets, and we read them like homework with our feet touching. The house felt warm again in that low, steady way that has nothing to do with the thermostat. She asked about the ring without asking, and I smiled without answering, and both of us walked carefully around the newness like a garden we didn't want to trample. The next day, I texted Jay to apologize for her name being drafted into service without her permission. She replied with 1,000 exclamation points and a threat to tackle me if I bought anything in a heart shape. I sent her a very serious article about how heart shapes are misunderstood by society. She sent me a photo of a ring that made me say, "Oh," out loud. The plan resumed, quieter, better. I know some of you will say a lie is a lie. Some of you will insist that if a sentence can be bent for a surprise, it can be bent for something else. I don't disagree that the slope exists, but I also know the difference between a door closed to hide a party and a door closed to hide a person. This felt like the first kind. I got to be hurt and she got to be wrong, and we still got to be us. Both things can live in the same house. Here's what surprised me most: how fast suspicion can recruit you. One small break in the story and I was ready to audition for the worst possible role. If you've ever been there, if your stomach has ever dropped over a sentence you couldn't reconcile, I see you. Your body wants to protect you. It is allowed to knock on the walls. What matters is what you do next. Do you burn down the house, or do you turn on the lights and look together? We picked up the snake a week later. She was even smaller than she looked in the photo, a ribbon of sunset that curled gently around my wrist. My girlfriend watched me with the kind of smile that makes time pass differently. I watched her hold the snake with both caution and care, and something unwound in me I didn't know I'd tied. We drove home with the little carrier wedged between us like a secret we were done keeping. That night, we set up the enclosure and argued over names in the way you argue when all the outcomes are good. The living room glowed the way it does when you finally sit after doing a thing right. We didn't fix trust with a pet. We fixed trust by telling the truth about what hurt and why and who we wanted to be on the other side of a sentence. The snake was just a small, perfect reminder that love can learn new shapes. If you've listened this far, I want to ask you something because this space works best when it's a conversation. Would you have confronted immediately, even if it meant risking a proposal plan you couldn't replace? Would you have let it go and swallowed the question, or asked for the truth and risked a surprise? Is a lie for a gift ever okay, or do you draw a hard line even when the intention is bright? If you'd forgive a cover story made to protect a kind surprise, tap like. If you wouldn't, tell me why. I read every comment, even the ones that disagree, because that's how we learn each other's lines. I don't have a cinematic ending for you yet. There isn't a slow motion proposal on a mountain or a string quartet hiding behind a couch. There is a small animal that needs a warm place to hide, a calendar with a circle around a date I chose, and a woman who learned how to hold something that once scared her because she wanted to hold me better. There is a ring that will find its day, and a story that no longer needs to borrow someone else's name to keep it secret. If you ever find yourself staring at a text that makes your heart forget its job, may you have the courage to ask a plain question and the patience to listen to a plain answer. May you save surprises for cake and not for alibis. May your home stay loud with the right kind of quiet. And may you always know the difference between a shadow and the shape of something good coming closer.